Make some noise. It's Making Monsters with Taylor Dahl. It's like beer and brats, a perfect combination.
You know the deal.
All right, now we're joined by Coach Smart. He is are you still at South Gwinnett? Where are you at now, Coach?
I'm not. It's Coach Small, not Smart.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I am currently at East Coweta High School.
Okay. Still in Georgia, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The Georgia guys pump out, the high schools up in Georgia pump out players, and we know that very well. I live in Florida. We're very familiar with a lot of the kids that go to Georgia. Sorry, Coach Small, but the former coach for South Gwinnett, which is where Terell Smith went to high school. I don't know a whole lot, honestly, about Smith. I've been trying to learn a little bit recently about kind of his path in high school. So let's go back to the beginnings. When did you first see Terell? What was your period of time that you were coaching him? How did all of that kind of work out?
Well, I was fortunate enough, I got to coach Terell his 9th, 10th, and 11th grade year. After his junior season, I relocated and took another job and hated to leave because we had Terell and about 4 or 5 other kids that were Power 5 kids, but those kids understood what I was doing for my family and what have you, but still stayed in touch with those guys, and they meant a lot to me. And so I had a chance to coach him for 3 years and get to know him and build a relationship with him and during that time.
So within those 3 years, was he always, because in high school we see a lot of high school kids obviously play both sides of the ball. You're trying to figure out where they play best. Was he always looking like he was going to be in that defensive back spot, or did you guys have to shift him around a little bit to find where he was most comfortable?
Well, at a young age, he played both sides on the younger team, but his sophomore year, he played corner. And, excuse me, and he was a long kid, long athletic kid, had elite speed on the track. Didn't really know if he was going to be a football player or a track guy or a track guy that played football or a football player that ran track. But I found out real early in his career as a sophomore, he had hurt his ankle pretty bad. And so we went into that next Monday and I said, hey, how's your ankle? And a track guy would have said, Coach, I can't do anything. I can't play. But he said, Coach, I'm going to tape it up and I'm practicing. And I knew right then, I said, okay, this kid's got some grit about him. He's a tough kid. And he just continued to progress as he went, and he always had elite speed, but he was great in the classroom, a real quiet kid, just did what you asked him to do and wanted to do it well. And he just got progressively better and better and better and became an elite corner.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen that. And when we'll get a little bit to maybe, I know you were gone that senior year, but the recruiting process for him a little bit. But when you're playing corner, and I know a little bit he played wide receiver also, that speed is something that sticks out. And it's something that we've already seen in Chicago, how fast he is. Is there anything aside from that really stuck out to him in high school where maybe when you were watching, you're like, okay, this kid's going to go play college football?
Yeah, I knew he was going to go play college football because of his speed and his fast twitch and his knowledge of the game and obviously his knowledge in the classroom. He was a great student, so I knew that he would set himself up, and I knew his best days were ahead of him, when high school was over. When he got to college and was challenged a little bit differently with some elite athletes at that level, that it would either, make or break him. That's usually what happens. But he had a special talent, and he had length that that the colleges like, especially in the secondary, in that speed. And, he played wide receiver too and kick returner. But we used to always tell our kids that, wide receivers are a dime a dozen. You may be fast, but there's a lot of guys that are fast that can catch a ball, but can you go over there and cover that fast guy?
Yeah.
And those are the elite athletes. And that's what he did. And so when people asked him, in the recruiting process, he committed early to Minnesota while I was still there. But a lot of schools had come in and, they would ask him, what do you want to play at the next level? And he would say, we kind of taught him, hey, don't say receiver because, everybody wants to do that. But, number one, you say you put me wherever you want me, wherever I can help the team. but I want to play corner, and a lot of kids don't want that challenge, because you're on an island every single day by yourself. And if you make a play, people may cheer, but if the other guy makes the play on offense, everybody's cheering, So you got to have some thick skin and some be able to deal with some adversity and bounce back. And he did a phenomenal job with that. So I kind of knew once he got to the next level, he was going to be successful at whatever he did.
Yeah.
We tell our kids all the time that you got a better chance of being a brain surgeon than you do an NFL player. There's not many jobs. So if you get one of those jobs, you are among the elite, but make sure you go get your education paid for if you can and graduate with a degree. And I'm so happy for him because he's been able to accomplish both.
Well, and that's one of the things that we kind of see. You see the numbers constantly of the percentage of kids that play high school football, how that decreases to college, and then how that number from college decreases to the NFL. So it's really cool. And when you're talking about a player like this who, he knew he had that he played track. He was fast enough to kind of do that and kind of figured out football was the way he wanted to go. And so I didn't know he committed pretty early to Minnesota then, and you were around for that. What was the process like for him? Because this is a big decision for these kids. They're kind of they're deciding the rest of their lives almost of what path they're going down. So what kind of led him to Minnesota? And I'm guessing usually it's coaches, facilities, that type of thing, but it's a little bit ways from home. So what was that like for him?
He had a lot of people in the South that wanted him. I think he had a great relationship with the defensive back coach at that time, which was Mo Lindquist, who's now the head coach at the University of Buffalo. And I think he's been with the Cowboys and some other places too, but he's now the head coach at Buffalo. But he did a phenomenal job recruiting kids from Georgia. And when P.J. Fleck got there to Minnesota, they really put a hard spin on going after some Georgia kids because Coach Lindquist knew the type of kids Georgia kids were. And when you get one of those kids, they're ready to play football, because it's ingrained in them down here in the South. But so I think that relationship with him played a huge factor. And then the other thing about Terell was he was always a loyal kid. Back when we were there was a lot of recruiting going on within county, within state for high schools. It's almost worse than college sometimes in Georgia with all that stuff. And we had a tough year his sophomore year, and he could have packed his bags and gone somewhere else, and people would have taken him. But he was a loyal dude, and he stuck with it. And our team had great results because of him and some other kids that said, "No, we're going to stick this out and fight through it." So adversity doesn't bother him. He's a guy that's going to lead in those situations. So when the DB coach left after he had committed, he stayed true to them and said, "That's where I've committed to go. That's where I'm going." So him being with the Bears right now, and talking to him, last week and a couple of weeks ago, is they're having some tough times, but he's the right kid, the right guy to change that culture because that's who he is.
And that's definitely what we want to hear. The defensive back in general, the room in Chicago is very young. And this most recently, these last couple of weeks, we've seen an increase in snaps from Smith because of injuries due to other people. But I'll tell you, Coach, pretty early in camp, there was a battle because the Bears also drafted a guy named Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, another corner, who they were battling all camp. And a lot of people, they got Tyreek in the second round, they got Smith in the fifth round. And so there was a lot of people thinking that Tyreek Stevenson would come out and kind of just take that job. And Smith really gave him a run for his money through camp. And so I'm really excited that we're kind of getting to see him have his chance this last couple of weeks. It's unfortunate that it's due to other injuries for other players. You never want to see that. But that's how sometimes that's when you know that what they're drafting and what they're drafting in the depth pieces. And you mentioned it earlier, just that position in general. And he kind of went after that corner because wide receivers are all over the place. That defensive backs are, every time I've talked to any coach, whether it's high school, college, pro football, they all say that defensive back position is one of the hardest to kind of progress through in each level because it just gets harder as you go. It's never going to be super comfortable. You're constantly having to learn and readjust and figure out new things. So, and you're seeing that from him pretty quick, which I love. You spoke on that loyalty. I love that. That's why we're here. Making Monsters is all about getting to know these guys outside of the X's and O's. We love football, but we also love the people, and we like to know more about their personalities. And that corner position, a lot of times, it's chatty. They like to, go back and forth with some of those receivers and talk their talk. Is that the type? Did you see that from Terell?
He wasn't a huge talker. He was just a guy that put his head down, went to work. if he made a big play, he went on to the next play.
Yeah.
A lot of kids get all caught up in what they just did or what just happened, but he was just an even keel guy that you never worried about. If he got beat deep or got beat on something, he never hung his head. So ultimate competitor. Was very competitive in everything that he did. He wanted to be the best at it, but he wasn't a showboat guy. He's just a lunch pail guy that went to work every day. And I respected that out of him a lot because he had every right to be boisterous and all that stuff, but that wasn't him.
I love that. I'm going to shift a few more for you because you guys are, at least South Gwinnett, when you were there, about an hour down the road from two players that are talked about a whole lot in the NFL right now, especially in Chicago. Justin Fields, just over an hour away from where South Gwinnett is, also Trevor Lawrence. And I know it was a little bit before that time, obviously, or I guess Terell was there a little bit after that. But that just shows the kind of talent that comes out of Georgia. And I probably could list over 100 players that everybody knows their name. How familiar were you with Justin Fields, just being that close and the time frame being pretty similar?
Yeah, about all those kids. I mean, it's the kids talk about it. It's, the state does an unbelievable job of covering high school athletics with the media and TV and all that stuff. And so you knew about all the great players and who they are and what they're doing. And that's another advantage I think Terell has, and the other kids that have played up there. And in the state of Georgia, they're used to all this stuff. It doesn't, a TV in front of them, a radio, it doesn't faze them because they've been brought up in it and they're used to it, and so all about that down here.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I'm very familiar in Florida. It's the same way. They're really good about supporting their high school football here locally, which I love because it's really cool to kind of watch these guys grow from what you're watching, freshmen, sophomores, and then you're seeing them be successful in college and then now sometimes also into the NFL, which you saw that progress. How cool was that for you to watch this player who you saw as a freshman starting to now getting drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 5th round?
Well, I got in this profession to try to have as big as impact as I can on kids because of what coaches have had on me when I played and came up. And you just want to pour as much as you can into these kids to try to help them reach their dreams. And to see a kid make it, it's nothing that we did. It's every God-given ability that they've been blessed with, and they took full advantage of their talents and utilized every one of them. And so when they make it, you're so happy for them because it changes their life. It changes their family's life, and it couldn't happen to a better young man than Terell Smith because I know he does all the right things and handles his business and it's just going to leapfrog him into a career after this because he's a people person and people love him. And but it's very satisfying and you almost cry when you think about it as a coach because you go, this kid made it, and you're happy for them,
I love that. Yeah,
I'm just glad to have played a small part in his life. There's a lot of other people that had a role in it too.
Yeah, and it's really cool, like you said, to see just kind of the progress, and how hard these kids work to get to this level, and that's why when I came up with the Just Monsters, that's why I did it. I wanted to know, the path of how they got there and beyond just the NFL because there's a lot of story behind these guys aside from what they just do on Sundays now. Again, I want to say thank you for hopping on with me. I know you have a big week. You have a ton of interviews. You guys are a televised game this week.
Yeah, state game of the week in the highest classification, and we've got a really good team coming into town, so we got our hands full this week, but that's why we play the game. That
is. All right. Well, Coach, thank you so much for hopping on with me. Good luck this weekend. That'll be obviously definitely an experience for you and experience for those kids. And good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks a lot, Taylor. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hot, hike.